Hi everybody, welcome to this session on working with DITA maps. I'm going to explore a couple of different key things that you need to think about when you're working with maps, and you need to be able to plan, create, manage, and publish content. I'll spend a little bit of time talking about planning and outlining a map from a higher level, some of the basics of linking information and what happens when you have a parent and child relationship, rel tables as another way of managing links, attributes that can be used to drive some of the output, and I'll also touch on DITA val files that allow for conditional publishing. And I'll show a little bit of a hands-on in FrameMaker, XMetaL, and Oxygen. Now, your version of these software tools may be different than the one that I'm using. Not a big deal. Just work your way through it. Generally speaking, they will all work similar to what you're going to see in the demo. I also want to mention that not all of the slides or the topics are going to be equally weighted. Some will be more useful to you than others. The slide speed will probably vary. It's not 30 seconds per slide, but you can watch and pause the video as you work your way through things. I would love to claim any of the errors or the typos is done on purpose, but they isn't. They weren't, never, and they ain't. I will fix them as I can. If you do notice something, there are a couple of ways that you can contact me, and Twitter is usually a pretty good tool for it. My contact information is also at the very end of the slides, and I'd suggest that if certain slides are useful to you, track the slide numbers at the top of the screen or jot down the timestamp on how far you are into the session so that you can quickly jump back to that location. My name is Bernard Ashwanden. I'm with Publishing Smarter and a bit of a content strategist, publishing technologies expert, author, and geek enough to have a pretty good idea of what I'm doing, but not so geek that I'll lose you in the details, hopefully. I'm a certified technical trainer, and I do a lot of work in the data and content management space and topic-based writing. I'm also involved with the STC as the past president and an associate fellow. And the last of my introductory slides, the standard disclaimer. In the interest of brevity, I will make some blanket statements as I work through things to try to keep it simple. Not everything is 100% the truth, but I will try to stay close. Purists may end up complaining. I'd say they're wrong, because what I'm trying to do is just explain ideas. But if you do talk to a purist who says, actually, these are the specifics, you know what? They may very well be right. I want to give you enough to get you started and to get you thinking about these things, but not get you buried in all of the detail. Let's get started. And to get started, I'm going to talk about planning and outlining your map. Odds are the most important thing you do when you're working with a map is done before you even start doing anything with the software. You need to make sure you have a good idea of the topics to write. In many cases, you sit down and you brainstorm. To get started the very first time, you'd likely identify some sort of a high-level goal that somebody wants to achieve. Once you know what that high-level goal is, you start to identify the different topics that you're going to need in order to put this together, in order to teach somebody, or in order to guide them, or in order to provide the appropriate reference information. So you build a list of all of the different topics. As you start to identify what order that those topics go in, you can organize the list with main topics and subtopics. And in some cases, you may realize that you have to add additional information. You may end up starting with an older set of documentation. You may have legacy material, a table of contents from a previous document that exists, perhaps even legacy files that are hundreds or even thousands of pages long. It is incredibly important when it comes time to plan your map that you review this type of information, have an understanding, and again, perform those three core tasks for identifying what is the goal, what are the topics in order to help someone achieve the goal, and what order should those topics be presented in. You should also likely create some shell content. If you don't already have materials, even if you do, you may want to set up a basic file with nothing other than a title and a short description, and those two become really crucial, and you'll see why a little later on in the video. Once you have identified and spent time putting together all of this information, then you can start to fire up the software and perform some of the tasks that you'll see inside this presentation. But make certain you know exactly what that end goal is and how to get there. Otherwise, you're going to be spending your time spinning your wheels, trying to go through and creating all kinds of content without having a clear understanding of whether or not that content actually has value. During this presentation, and just for our specific purposes here, I'm going to actually create a couple of topics that are designed to teach people about maps. So my end goal is to actually create DITA documentation that teaches people about maps. And in kind of a meta way, I'm going to teach you about maps by writing about maps. So my goal is to help you create, manage, and publish a map. And I'm going to write a few different topics. I'll explain what a map is, at least with a title and a short description, how to create a map from scratch, how to add topics to a map, how to reorganize these topics, how to publish the content, and a little bit about some of the publishing formats that are supported. To do all of this, I'm going to actually create a couple of topics. I'm going to create some of the topics related to my concept about DITA maps, my reference on publishing outputs, and several tasks related to creating maps, adding topics, reorganizing, publishing. And you can use any DITA software. I'm going to work with FrameMaker and with XMetaL and with Oxygen in order to show you a little bit of each of these. Again, most of the tools are similar, but in the FrameMaker world, under the DITA menu, you can choose New DITA File, and in this example, I'm going to create a concept, but you can see multiple options are available. This is a little bit of what the default looks like. If you're not familiar with how to go in and work with a basic document inside FrameMaker, I'd suggest you take a little bit of time and watch one of my other videos because I don't want to go into too much detail. Quick things. Top right-hand corner, if your structure and XML environment is not showing and you don't see that XML/structured, click the drop-down, make sure you choose it. If you don't see that, check that you're in the structured interface. Easy way to check. The main menus across the very top, File, Edit. Do you have one that's called Element? And a little further on, do you have one that's called DITA? If you do not, under Edit Preferences, you'll have to change the interface to Structured FrameMaker. In any case, this is what it should generally look like, and I'm going to go and type in a title. It's pretty easy to get the text in there. By default, FrameMaker places the insertion point next to the title, so all you need to do as soon as you create a new topic of any type, whether it's concept, task, reference, or a generic topic, is start typing the title. If there's elements that you don't need, in this case I'm going to get rid of the prologue, what you can do is click right in the middle of it, and when it's selected, press delete. That was pretty straightforward. Again, I click in the middle of related links, then I press delete. You then continue to add content. In my case, I'm going to click beside short desk, just a little bit to the right of it, in the structure view, and type in a short description, and then I'll click beside the P element in the paragraph and type in a paragraph and create a little bit of content so that I have a finished initial concept. Once I'm done, the content might appear something like what you see here. A finished title, short description, and a paragraph inside the concept body. To put together the body information for all of your material does take a little bit of time, and since I want to focus on maps, subsequent topics are going to get title and short description, and I'll just remove the body in order to get things started. That was the approach inside FrameMaker. In XMetaL, after you choose File New and you select a reference, you can do the same type of a thing. You can click inside the title, type content. The order in which you do these things doesn't matter. I could type in a short description, then delete the reference body, or I could select the reference body and delete it and then type the short description, as long as at the end you end up with a title and a short description for the topics that are going to become a part of your map. That's the important piece. Make sure that those two key things exist, title and short description, and of course, follow the outline in regards to planning your map. Once I click inside ref body, I can press delete. To finish off working in XMetaL, I'll click inside the short description and type something in. This represents how you might go about creating a topic if you were instead working with XMetaL. I've shown you two software tools, and I'll work with one more. This is Oxygen, and again, I've gone in and created under File, a new, and in this case a task instead of a concept or a reference. After highlighting the content in the title, I type in new text. Just as I did in the other tools, I'll click inside the body content, in this case the task body, and delete it. I've also gone in, added a short description, and you can see what the finished topic may look like with the title and the short description. Let's move on. After I've done my planning, after I've identified the different topics that I need, after I've come up with some type of an organization, what I'm going to need to do is build a basic DITA map. The topics that I have includes the list that's here, the concept of reference, and 4 tasks that I will go in and create. And it may take a little bit of a while to put those together, but I create an initial map afterwards of all of those files and give it a title. This map is going to be titled Create and Publish Maps, because my goal is, my big goal that I've identified previously, is that people who watch this video are going to know at the end how to create and publish maps. Once I've put the title together, once I've identified what the topics are, I'm going to save the map, and I end up with one of these 3 types of views. I may end up in FrameMaker, which is in the background, in XMetaL, which is the middle of the 3, or in Oxygen, which is in the foreground. It doesn't matter which tool you work with, you'll see that there are very strong similarities between them in regards to the way that a map is represented. Let me take a few minutes and go in and show you how to do this in each of the different software tools. In order to create a map inside FrameMaker, I choose DITA, New DITA File, and then I click on New Map. The map is created, and I'll click once inside the map title location. That gives me a location that I can then go and start to insert topic refs. And if I had 25 topics in here, I could click on any one of them and insert additional topic ref. And a topic ref is a topic reference. It is the map's way of being instructed exactly where and what file exists that needs to be inserted. Clicking the very first toolbar icon directly above the map gives me a pop-up, and I can choose Topic Ref. In the resulting pop-up, there's a lot of choices, but just click Browse. In the resulting dialog, you could choose to double-click any one topic in order to insert it, or if you're using FrameMaker, hold down Control, click on Other Topics. Each control click adds another topic to the collection. Once you've collected all those topics, click Select. You are returned to the dialog and then can click OK to add them to the map. This is how one of the three tools handles adding topics to a map. Once you're done, of course, make sure that you save the map, put it into an appropriate location. In this case, I'd probably put it into my G drive as well, in the same location that all of my other information about DITA maps is to be found. That is the G drive /DITA_maps. And I may name it something as simple as workingwithmaps.ditamap. Each tool is a little different. In XMetaL, under File, I would choose New. Here the information is organized by primary tabs, and you can see I'm currently in the one named DITA Topic. I'm going to click instead on DITA Map. Within it, I have a couple of different types of map, but the one I want is the fourth one in, Map. In XMetaL, I'm immediately prompted for the map title, which I'll type in. Once done, I click OK or press Enter. My map is created. With the map selected, I click Insert, and I'll choose the first option, Topic Reference. Topic Ref in FrameMaker, Topic Reference here inside XMetaL. Exact same idea, minor differences in the way that they're implemented. Inside the resulting dialog, I click Browse. Make sure that it's the first browse, the one that's related to the href. FrameMaker allowed me to select multiple files by control clicking. XMetaL only allows you to insert one at a time, but there's a reason for it. So I'm going to go in and click on the reference. It's selected, and then I can click Open. XMetaL prompts you for a set of properties. The difference between FrameMaker and XMetaL then is that in FrameMaker you can insert multiple documents, but then you have to individually assign these different properties. In XMetaL, you can select one at a time, and you have a dialog that immediately pops up, allowing you to configure all of the inserted topic references. It's up to you on which tool you're going to work with and how you work with them, but the idea is exactly the same. The implementation within the software tools has some differences. Both tools allow you to insert content into a map. Both tools allow you to assign attribute values, such as the ones seen here in General or under Other Attributes or Topic Meta, and both tools have slightly different ways of doing it, but at the end of the day, you still end up with an entirely valid map that's being used for DITA purposes. And to conclude the idea, I'm going to go in Oxygen and choose File, New, in order to create a map. Oxygen does something pretty neat here. You can see at the top it has the Type Filter Text. Now, I've recently worked with tasks and maps and filters and all kinds of other content, so map is already available. But if it was not, you could simply start typing map and it will automatically find it inside the list of all the available documents. And as soon as you see map and then in the square brackets ditamap/map, you could go ahead and create one. Again, I've already worked with a map previously, so I can just double click it. I'm going to open the map in the DITA Maps Manager, but if you had clicked on Editor, or if you had already done this and clicked Do Not Show the Dialog Again, and you're trying to figure out how do you go back and forth between the two, I will show you later in the video how to toggle the view between the DITA Map Manager and the Editor, and all three software tools allow you to do this. So I'm clicking DITA Maps Manager. It technically doesn't matter that much. By the time you're done watching the video, you'll know how to toggle back and forth anytime you need it. And there are several different ways that I can go and I can add topic graphs. I'm going to click the first icon directly above the Untitled 3 DITA map. This results in a dialog that is a little bit of a hybrid between what XMetaL and what FrameMaker do. Keep an eye on the dialog. I'm going to click on the task to create a map, but watch what happens in the bottom portion of the dialog, especially around the area where the properties are located. With a single document selected, I can populate the properties, but I can also hold down Control and click a second topic. And I'm going to click on the task for Reorg Map. Watch what happens to the properties this time. Because these attributes are applied on a topic-by-topic level, they're grayed out if I select more than one. So you can choose which approach you want to take. And again, later on, I will show you how to work with this dialog again so that you can take any of the topics that are inside your map and manipulate them by changing around some of these properties. I've shown you in 3 different tools how you can go through and create a map, add a couple of topics to it, and I've talked a little bit about the features of each of the different software tools. Let's move on. I've talked about creating maps at this point and always opening them up in the map view. But I also mentioned, especially when we got to Oxygen, that you can toggle this. So let me explore with you how this is done in different software tools. And the reason that you'll need to do this is based on the types of options that apply to a task that you need to perform. Sometimes you need to work in the map view. Sometimes you want to work inside the document view. The sub-bullets mention how to do this in FrameMaker, XMetaL, or Oxygen by going through the toolbars. However, you also have a couple of other approaches that you can take. In FrameMaker, the very top set of icons, you'll see that there's a small toolbar that represents a DITA map. And inside it, near the middle, is a small sheet of paper with an eyeball icon. When you click it, it switches over to the document view. Then the toolbar goes away, and what you'll see across the top of your FrameMaker window is all of your menus, File, Edit, and so on, and then eventually Window and Help, a small set of icons, and then one that will switch over to the Resource Manager. It looks like a small structured tree. In XMetaL, you use the File menu, and you have to go through File and switch to the XML view, or click on File and switch to the Map Editor. And if you are trying to switch to the XML view of the map, make sure you click the file that is in the Resource Manager, not the file that is located at the very top of the XMetaL window. When you have a map and you're in the map view, you're working with what's called the Resource Manager. Lastly, in Oxygen, you can come along and you can right mouse click inside the tab of a map and you can toggle to open it in the DITA Maps Manager view. So there's different ways that you can do this. I'll show a little bit later on changing the map view. All of the information that I've given you so far is great when it comes to creating a map, but maps on their own and topics on their own are pretty much useless. You want to be able to publish content and distribute it to different audiences. I mentioned how you can do this in FrameMaker, XMetaL, and Oxygen, and I'll expand on it a little bit inside the demo. You can do a straight file save DITA map as in FrameMaker, and there's also an option under File to publish and under DITA to create content using the Open Toolkit. In XMetaL and Oxygen, the toolkit is used behind the scenes or you're using style sheets, and in order to access it in XMetaL, you would choose File, Generate Output 4, and you'll see the dialog in a few moments, and in Oxygen, under DITA Maps, you would do your configure transformation. You're also very likely going to want to be able to reorganize information. It's unlikely that the first time you place any material inside a map it's going to be absolutely perfect, especially with more complex maps, or as you make edits and you start to understand more about what the content is that you're going to be delivering. If you're going to reorganize a map, I suggest first you close any output that you may have previously generated, especially if it's a PDF document, so that you can regenerate and overwrite the old files. You can drag and drop to rearrange information, or you can use icons on toolbars. And the 3 toolbars with the arrows showing are from FrameMaker, XMetaL, and Oxygen, and you'll see that they're almost identical. Then you would reorganize your topic. So what I'm going to do is take the map and reorganize it with the idea of something along what you see here. It may not be 100% the same, but I'm going to have main and subordinate topics. You can see a representation on screen. In the background is the FrameMaker Work with Maps DITA map, and it has the main map, Create and Publish Maps, that's the title, and then in it there's a primary concept that introduces things, multiple tasks, and one task has a supporting reference. The exact same information, the exact same map, is represented in the foreground in the DITA Maps Manager dialog, and that's from Oxygen. And you'll find that all three software tools, again, have a very similar approach to displaying this type of information. As you reorganize information, it's nice to be able to republish it so that you can see what the results are. Again, I'll show you some demonstrations in a moment. Let's take a few minutes to move into the next portion of the demo where I'm going to reorganize maps inside Frame XMetaL and Oxygen, and I'm going to change the map view in Frame, XMetaL, and Oxygen, and then publish using FrameMaker, XMetaL, and Oxygen so that you get a chance to see a little bit of each of these. In FrameMaker, first select one of the objects that's inside the map and then use the four arrows in order to move it down, up, left, right. It's pretty straightforward and you just continue to click arrows. It may not seem like a big deal to just click the arrows to move it around. You can also drag and drop to rearrange them, but in doing so, you're actually changing the structure of your entire documentation, and that would be reflected in any output you generate, a table of contents, a navigation structure for a website, etc. Aside from moving it just up or just down, you can also demote or promote information. As you push information further to the right, you're demoting it so that it will go from a heading 1 to a heading 2 to a heading 3 and so on. FrameMaker also lets you select multiple topics in the map. So I can click on the first task, then I'll control click on the last one. When I click the arrow to demote them towards the right, they'll all move in as a subordinate of the concept on DITA maps, and the reference on publish outputs will still remain as a subordinate of the last task where I talk about how to publish a map. I've reorganized a map. Now I'm going to click that icon of the sheet of paper with an eyeball. By the way, if you do this and you've modified the map, you're likely prompted to save it. I'm going to click in front of the word Maps in the Create and Publish Maps in order to edit the title. The default title, which read Map Title, could have been highlighted at any point in time by doing this exact same method, and you would type in your custom title, whatever it happens to be. I've already done that, but I forgot to put in the word DITA, so I'm going to add it now. A few keystrokes later, I've updated my title. Keep a good eye on the top of the screen. I've got my menu. It ends with things like Window and Help and then a couple of icons. I'm going to click and toggle back to the Resource Manager. To close out FrameMaker, I'm going to go in and show you a little bit about how I can save the DITA map in different formats. So I click File. I'm going to take the DITA map and save the DITA map as something else. I've already done a bunch of work inside this folder, so you can see there's a lot of different files, but at the bottom, where I have Save As Type and it currently reads XML, DITA map, I'm going to click the drop down. In here there's multiple options, but there's only two that I want to really focus on. One is the composite document. That will create a single FrameMaker document from your map, and it will have things like a main level title and title sub, so you'll have a title 1, 2, and 3. You would end up having these titles based on the hierarchy of the map, but it's one single file. There's also Book 2015 with FM components, Start.Book, and what that one will create is multiple documents. For each highest level object that's inside your map, you will end up with a chapter. And depending on how you do the configuration inside an INI file that is available to you, all kinds of configuration can be set. You'll end up with things like titles, you'll end up with tables of contents, list of figures, index. You can decide if you want to chop up the files into smaller parts, or if you want to make them into larger chapters. If you're interested in more information, the end of the video has my contact information. Send me an email message. We can set up a call and explore in a little bit more detail exactly how all of this configuration is done. It's very powerful. It's great for creating PDF content. It's a really good source for online material, but Adobe does also give you other publishing options for online especially. Let's take a look at some of those as well. Canceling out of the Save DITA Map As, I'm going to go back and click File. Adobe FrameMaker also allows you to publish. Adobe's made it easy to publish to outputs like responsive HTML5, mobile apps, EPUBs, and all types of other formats. If you want more information on how to configure these and how to work with DITA, again, my contact information is at the end of the video. And if you do want to use just the DITA Open Toolkit in order to generate your output, Adobe's even built in support for this. You just click on DITA, and at the bottom, Generate DITA OT Output. This would mean that you'd have to set up style sheets and do configuration. Again, I can work with you on that. My contact information, end of the video. Default formats include those that are supported by the DITA Open Toolkit. Moving on, let's take a look at how XMetaL handles reorganizing information. Again, I'm going to open a map and click on one of the references, the one called Publish Output Formats. I click the down arrow in order to move it down underneath Reorganize a Map. Each subsequent click moves it down. If you have to move it a lot, you may want to consider doing a click and drag instead. Just like in FrameMaker, I can click the arrow key pointing to the right in order to demote it. I'll click on Add Topics to a Map. I can't select multiple topics here the way I do in FrameMaker, but I can quickly click Demote in order to move it over and place it under Overview of Maps. Then I repeat the pattern. I click a topic and use the arrow. I had to skip ahead. After a while, that gets to be a little annoying. So instead, click and drag in order to reorganize information inside a map. I'm going to take Publish a Map and drag it up under Reorganize a Map. Now watch carefully. I want to see a black line under Reorganize a Map rather than a highlight on Reorganize. And what it'll do is place it equal to Reorganize with a black line, or if I was to drag and drop it into the middle of the words Reorganize a Map, which I won't, but if I was to do that, it would place it as a subordinate. So it's very quick, drag, drop, rearrange. Watch for the black line. Alright, let's go in under the File menu. This is where I switch to the XML view of the map. Again, depending on the type of task that you're trying to perform, sometimes you want to work inside the document view, and sometimes you want to be in the resource manager. This view is really helpful when you're working with things like rel tables, which we won't show you in this video, but we'll discuss it, and it's addressed in a video on its own. To toggle back, I click File, and then underneath, Switch to Map Editor. Remember earlier I mentioned about two different places where the File menu exists. Make sure that in the Resource Manager, when you're ready to publish, you click File. Within this, choose Generate Output for DITA Map. In the resulting dialog, take a look at all the choices that are available in the deliverable type. There are multiple different formats that you'll see available under the deliverable type. Happy to work with you on customizing any of these. Again, my contact information is at the very end of the presentation. And finally, let's go over to Oxygen and show you a familiar idea. I select Topics and I click on the arrows. I move content up and down in order to treat it as an equal, or I use the arrows in order to demote or promote. Structurally, this changes everything. All of the content is going to end up as a heading 1 or a heading 2. It's going to appear with a different layout in the table of contents. It may have a different navigation system in any online help or website. And just as I can with the other software tools, instead of using the arrows, I can drag and drop. This time I drop directly into Publish a Map, and therefore Publish Output Formats is inserted as a subordinate. Like in FrameMaker, I can click one and shift-click further down in order to select a range. This makes it nice and quick to demote all of these under Overview of Maps. Oxygen has a second set of icons located just above those 4 arrows. I'm going to use that to toggle my view. I'll click and open the map in the editor. Aside from using icons or menus, I can also right-mouse click in Oxygen inside the title where it reads Work with Maps DITA Map. Then I'll open this in the DITA Maps Manager view. If the map doesn't automatically close, you can always close it at any time by clicking the X next to the name. There's also an icon above the arrows, and it looks a little bit like a wrench. Let's go and click on it. The Configure Transformation Scenarios dialog box allows you to select one or more types of outputs to generate. As you click in the dialog, check marks appear, and then you would click Apply Associated. This will then generate the output that you've specified. So in all 3 software tools, I've shown you within Maps how to go in, reorganize information, toggle the view, and publish content. I've shown you how to reorganize information in a map so that you have primary and secondary, technically parent and child topics inside the map. There is some automatic linking that's going to happen between the parent and the child. Let's go and explore this. In online content, the link is automatically created in almost every online environment between the parent and the child. You can expand on how it does this through the use of attributes. Almost everything in the map, all the topic refs, are going to have a collection type attribute. This includes options for things like unordered, sequence, choice, and family. And I want to show you what happens in a small way when you go in and you start to tweak these. The default when it comes to publishing, having a parent and child, is that the tool is going to create the link. It's going to output the format, and it may include things like the title, the short description, and the link up and down between those. Now this is pretty cool. This is the default publishing. This is just one sample of output. All I did was I created titles and short descriptions, and I created a map with a bit of a hierarchy. But because overview of maps is my primary topic, and create a map, add topics to a map, reorganize a map, and publish a map are all subordinates, they automatically get inserted inside this help page. You can see that create a map, add topics, reorganize, and publish a map are in blue. That's the title, and underneath it is the short description. That's all automatically generated. In the actual overview of maps file, if you recall way back when I created that in FrameMaker, all I did was I typed in the title overview of maps, the short description of the map element describes the relationship among a set of resources, such as DITA topics, and I added a paragraph. But at publish time, a whole bunch of extra information is added. Navigating down into create a map, you can see that the title, create a map, is there, most DITA software, etc. There's also the parent topic, overview of maps. And if I hover over that, the short description from the parent topic overview of maps pops up on screen. And again, that's automatically done because of my use of a map with parent and child and my use of a title and a short description. Almost everything you see here had minimal typing, a title and a short description, with the exception of overview of maps where I added one paragraph. Jumping to publish a map, and you can see that the title appears, the short description, and the subordinate of publish output formats is automatically inserted with a map can be converted to a range of file types, and there's also the link up to the parent topic overview of maps, and of course when you hover over, it gives you the pop-up of the short description. Minimal effort on my end, but in the publish I have a very solid prototype that I can show others in order to give them a good idea of exactly what they'll see inside the document. The piece that is primarily missing right now is the core body for all of these topics, but as far as a prototype goes, this is pretty solid. The default at the highest level was to only link to the subordinates, and it basically displayed them in no specific sequence. I'm going to change the topic ref and use the collection type in order to set this up as a sequence. And that means that the child topics will be ordered as links from first to second to third. So we'll see things like a 1, 2, 3, 4. However, there's also things such as a choice, family, sequence, which I've just mentioned, and unordered that is available. And it depends on which tool you're using, how you apply these, but the general idea of what they do is pretty much exactly the same. For example, if collection type is set up to be treated as a sequence, then I still get my map, overview of maps, I still get my short description, the map element, I still get my paragraph, maps consist of, but instead of seeing unnumbered titles for create a map, etc., and short descriptions, I actually get a 1, 2, 3, and a 4 in front of them. And as I work my way through the topics, a couple of other interesting things have happened. If I jump into, for example, add topics to a map, which in my table of contents you can see has a parent of overview of maps, and it has a previous topic, create a map, and a next topic of reorganize a map, that same information is displayed inside the actual topic. And again, that's automatically created. And of course, if you were to hover over one of those, the pop-up would show you the short description related directly to the title. So it gives you a bit of a preview before you click the link of what you're in for. So let's relatively quickly go in, take a look at how we would update the attributes in Frame, XMetaL, and Oxygen. And again, what's the result of the publishing? In FrameMaker, I select the concept, I right mouse click, and at the bottom, I edit attributes. I click the drop down next to collection type and choose sequence. In XMetaL, pretty much the exact same approach. I move over to the concept, the overview of maps, and I right-click. Then I choose Element Properties. And if this dialog looks a little familiar, it should. Remember earlier when we were adding topics to the map, the Topic Reference Properties dialog appears. Here, I've gone in and just right mouse clicked in order to open it up again so that I can manipulate some of the attributes and their values. In order to assign sequence, I'm going to go to the tab marked Other Attributes. Then I click the drop down for collection type. And if it's starting to feel familiar that all of the tools support the functions in slightly different ways, but the idea is exactly the same, you're absolutely right. In Oxygen, I go to Overview of Maps. I right-click and edit Properties. And in the dialog, I see Collection Type. And if you're taking bets, I'm willing to accept the cash that underneath the collection type, you're going to see Sequence. And there it is. I click Sequence, and in any of the 3 different software tools when I publish, they're going to create output, which, if properly configured, is going to show me things like a 1, 2, 3, 4 in online environments. Of course, in a PDF document, that may not necessarily need the same configuration, so you can actually get different output based on things like the collection type being recognized or ignored, dependent on the delivery. With Sequence, I end up Overview of Maps with 4 subordinates, and I click Publish a Map. In my online output, I get an automatic link to the subordinate, of course, but I also have a link to the parent, and because of the sequence, the previous topic. And again, this is in the online. PDF may not necessarily need the exact same configuration. PDF is usually paper-based, flipped from one page to the next, and therefore things like this don't carry as much value. So let's look at the PDF for all 3 outputs. Here it is from FrameMaker. There's no link to the parent or child. There's nothing inserted because of the sequence. You'll notice that the short description does have a gray background in order to make it stand out, which is great for reviewers to let them know that that is initial placeholder content. Of course, in a finished publish template, I'd go in and I'd configure it so that the content looks exactly the same as all of the other paragraphs, or maybe I would give it a minor difference such as making it bold or italic. All of the formatting that you see, 100% configurable. PDF out of XMetaL generates a table of contents, shows me the materials, does not have any links, parent, child, or sequence based. The exact same thing in the Oxygen PDF. Because this is a print-friendly medium, there's no need to waste paper by having all kinds of extra content linking back and forth between topics that are the flip of a page away. Instead, in the PDF content, you have all of the text, and in the online content, you have all of the online navigation tools, and that includes the support for things like the parent and child navigation, as well as the sequence. Let's close this out with 2 last topics. One is developing a rel table. This is building additional navigation structures. What if you're creating online content, but the default link between parent and child doesn't quite do what you need? That's where the rel table comes into play. Let's go explore. The relationship table, the rel table element, builds a tool into place that specifies relationships between topics. It's based on a familiar table model where you have rows, columns, and cells, and then you add content. In order to set up a basic rel table for a map, you would reorganize the map to a simple layout so that it's easy to demonstrate the function. If you have too many parent and child relationships, it starts to get pretty tricky to try to understand which link is being generated because of parent and child, and which link is being generated because of the relationship table. There are entire full-time jobs based on the idea of being able to manage maps and relationship tables. So don't make it overly complex. Start with a nice standard flat type of a structure. Here I have a main topic, the concept on DITA maps, and all tasks and references are equal underneath it. And if I was to publish this and then review all of the links with the online outputs, I'd see that the link exists from the concept DITA maps into all of the tasks and references, and from the tasks and references back into the concept DITA map. That's it. Hopefully that makes sense after what you've seen so far. The link between parent and child exists, nothing else. So the large graphic here shows the output of overview of maps, and it has links to each of 5 children. Create a map, add topics to a map, reorganize a map, publish a map, and publish output formats. In the background, you can see a couple of those, and they only link just to the parent topic. That's the default, parent and child. And before you put the work into building a relationship table, look for the logical links that might already exist, the parent and child, the idea of setting up a collection type with unordered sequence, choice, or family. Maybe, based on your output, you're not going to see all of them displayed. For example, PDF doesn't show you this. Online help does. Is it enough? And if not, then start thinking about the rel table. The details associated around developing rel tables will differ based on the tool you're using. You'll see that FrameMaker and XMetaL and Oxygen take different approaches. In a short map, it's often easy to just add it at the end. If you have a much larger map, you could put it near the related content so that it's a little easier to manage. I'm going to work with a simple map. And because they are part of the map, a nested map would still have a rel table. So if you ever get to the situation where you're putting a map inside a map, imagine you're writing about Canada and the United States of America and Mexico, and then you want to combine them together into a larger map on North America, which contains the map on Canada, the map on the USA, the map on Mexico. As you take the map for Canada and you build a rel table, it will automatically be a part of the North America map. So as soon as you publish the North America map, it inherits all the links in the rel table for Canada, plus any map references that are built in for USA, plus any that are built in for Mexico. And if in the larger map you also create additional links, they'll be there as well. So again, maps and rel tables can get very complex very quickly. It is nice if you can keep all the components, all the DITA pieces that you're linking to in the same map where you have a rel table. It just makes it a little easier to look at it and work with it. And again, we'll express the idea here, but I'm not going to show you anything too complex. Rel tables can be set up in a couple of different ways. Generally, behind the scenes, the code might say there's a rel table, and it has a header that identifies the first and the second and the third column. In this case, the first one is type of task, the second is concept, the third is reference. And then the rel rows are on the next slide, but end up thinking through this as a 3-column table, and in the first one you talk about tasks, the second concept, and the third one reference. And you don't have to put content into every single cell. Let's go take a look at some of the rel rows. Inside one row of the rel table, I have 3 cells. One of them is in black because it doesn't have anything. Remember, I also said think about the 3 columns. So the first one is just tasks, the second is a set of concept, and the third is a collection of any references. Here I have 2 tasks, create a map and publish a map, and I want both of them to be aware that they should link to publish outputs, which is a reference. And the reference should link back to both tasks. This is one representation. This is what it might look like in FrameMaker. In the first column for tasks, I have the 2 create a map and publish a map, the 2 tasks, and continuing across inside that row, I have no concepts that these point to, but they will point to the publish output formats, which in turn will publish and link back to the 2 tasks if the output format supports it. So I wouldn't see it, generally speaking, in a PDF, but I will definitely see it in online help. And if I tweak my PDF, then it may actually have links between them as well. So those possibilities all exist. It depends on what you set up and what you decide you want when it comes time to publish. And to stay fair, this is the XMetaL representation of the exact same information. And here's what that sample rel table might look like inside Oxygen. Each of the tools represents the same idea. And here's what the resulting content for those subordinates might look like when a rel table is included. Notice this time the task on create a map, the task on publish, both have a link to each other, to the other related task, and both of them have a link to the related reference. And the publish output formats, which is the reference, has a set of related tasks that it points back to. Now this is in an online environment. I actually like having the rel table output included inside PDF. The default parent and child links, I usually don't put those into the PDF. It's pretty easy for somebody to flip to the next page and the next page, or the previous page and the previous. But these links could end up being related links that point throughout the documentation. And therefore in my PDF, the related tasks for that reference may not just be a hyperlink away. It may not just be a page flip forward and back. It is possible that in the output that I create, I have a finished reference that reads publish output formats, a map can be converted, etc., etc. I don't have a link to the parent topic because somebody can just flip to the previous page, but I do have something that reads related task, create a map, page 7, publish a map, page 32. And the publish output formats might be on page 68. So this now gives me a way to create a very structured, organized way of linking from one piece of information to the other that goes beyond the parent and child. But as you can imagine, there's a lot of management that's involved in making the right decisions when it comes to building a rel table. When it comes to developing rel tables, again, each of the 3 different tools has a slightly different approach. You often add it at the end of a map, and you should try to keep all the data components in the same map if you have a rel table to make it easier on yourself, especially early on when it comes to managing content. Lastly, let's take a couple of minutes to talk about additional map level attributes and some of the things that you should think about when building your maps. Often you want to create unique content for an audience, a product, a platform, and give them specific output. Or you may have information that should be included for print or for online, or something that you may want to exclude from a table of contents. All of this can be done through the use of attributes in regards to your topic refs. If you want a lot of information on additional map level functions, pause this part of the video and give it a read through. I'll talk about it quickly. Topic refs can contain a collection type attribute, which we've talked about. It can have a processing role, where it's normal and it just appears as it would, or a resource only. It's only there for the convenience of managing the map. Linking, it could be a target, a source. It can normally link back and forth, or it could have no links. Table of contents, TOC, do you want it or not? Print, do you want it or not, or is it print only? Search, yes or no, do you include or exclude in searching? A lot of capability here. There's some map level attributes that can even be used inside topics. For example, the attribute for product or platform or audience. You could have a paragraph where you say the product is FrameMaker or XMetaL and Oxygen, and therefore the paragraph would be intended for one specific type of a product only when it's delivered. So product would be the name of the product, platform is the operating system or the hardware, audience would be the intended audience. If you've set up content in order to have product or platform or audience types of settings, you can combine the maps with the attributes and use something called a val, a DITA val file, to publish just what you need. And I'll talk about it and relate it back to what we just looked at where we had product, audience, platform. A val file can feel pretty complex at first, but if you look at the basics of it, it's actually a really simple statement that just identifies what to include or exclude and how, if at all, to format some content that ends up being included. This file is a little bit of a complex one. It has all kinds of properties in it. So instead of looking at all of the options, let's narrow it down to just 1 or 2. To make this easy, I'm going to talk about one specific property inside the val file where the action is to include anything where the attribute of audience has a specific value of everybody. Now that doesn't really restrict it in the context of what I've been talking about, because I've been talking about how FrameMaker works, how XMetaL works, how Oxygen works. So let's look at a DITA val file that talks about those 3 specific types of information. Because remember, I could have a paragraph where the product is FrameMaker. I could have a section where the audience is novice user. I could have a document where platform is Windows. Putting together different combinations and using a val file lets me publish very specific information. As a nice clean example, I'm writing documentation on how many different map tools work. I'm writing it for FrameMaker, I'm writing it for XMetaL, I'm writing it for Oxygen. And I may want to have some topics that on a map level I identify as having product equals FrameMaker, or product is XMetaL, or product is Oxygen. And then I want to create a conditional file. I want to have a val for each of them, and this is what they might look like. And you're going to see some that are a lot cleaner and a lot easier to understand. If I want just FrameMaker and nothing else, I could create this document. It's an XML file, it's a val, and it has 3 sets of properties. It has an action to include the product when it's set to FrameMaker and exclude the product of XMetal and exclude the product of Oxygen. Here's another val file. This one's just for XMetal, so it's going to include the product XMetal and exclude the other 2. This should make a little more sense now. And of course, you can probably guess what the Oxygen one is going to look like. It's an XML document. It has a val with a property action include set to be the product of Oxygen and to exclude XMetal and exclude FrameMaker. Let's sum this up, and I'll give you some information on how to contact me if you have further questions, or if you're looking to evaluate these products and starting to make your migration to DITA and you need some help. Early on, before you do any work with the software, take the time to plan, take the time to outline, build your map, identify what your goal is, what kind of content you have, what kind of content you need, and start to create some basic topics. Include things like a title and a short description. Build your map. There will be basic linking automatically inserted between parent and child. If you need additional links that are not direct parent and child, take advantage of rel tables. And as you build maps, be aware that any of the topic refs that you insert in a map can have attributes for things like product, and then by using a DITA file, you can publish a map, identify a DITA file to use, and create just the content for FrameMaker, just the content for XMetal, just the content for Oxygen for a user guide. Using the map that I have so far, I've created some general ideas. I've shown you a little bit of how this map is developed, what kind of information goes into it. You can build the basic map. You can insert basic linking. You can even use it to guide you on the conversation around the rel table. The attributes and the DITA files, demonstrations of those are going to be available in another video, but the hands-on demo so far should give you the opportunity to create a map, manage the topics within it, publish the content, and get a little bit more comfortable working with any or all of these software tools. An optional next step is to contact us for services. We help clients in creating content, managing that content, delivering it in multiple formats, socializing the message, listening to what it is that the audience has to say, and then improving the way that they work. It's what we do with our own content, and it's what we do when we help our clients. We really help clients write less but write better through a broad range of services. This is my contact information. Your best bet is to send me an email, bernard@publishingsmarter.com. If I don't reply within about 24 hours, it could be that I'm traveling. If I don't reply within about 48 to 72 hours, feel free to call the number. That's my home phone number, so you're sure to be able to reach me or to leave a message for me. You can also contact me through my LinkedIn profile, on Twitter by following and tweeting to @PublishSmarter, or by visiting our website. I hope this video has helped you gain a better understanding of a DITA map and the components that go into it, and the capabilities of the map to help you create the right content for the right audience in the right formats and deliver it at the right time so that they can do their job and not have the documentation be any type of an obstacle. Documentation should always be seen as something that supports the end goal of the user and makes it easier for them to get to that goal. Thanks again.